Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ben Alegbadu, and I'm here to talk about GPT-powered AI shopping, from search to delight. All right, if anybody is interested, I have the slides already up. You can scan that if you would like, or follow that short link. You can go to my website, benmvp.com. I have the slides there. On X or Twitter, I already tweeted out a link to them. So there's lots of different ways that you can get the slides. The bottom will have a link in the footer for all of them. So you should be able to follow along there. All right, so let me just give a quick overview of what I would like to talk about. So first, I'll start with a demo of this AI shopping. Then I kind of want to peel back an onion, so to speak. So I'll start with what I'm calling a helicopter view for kind of a high-level technical of how this AI chatbot works. Then a bird's eye view, getting a little closer, start talking about a little bit of the implementation, but it will be code agnostic. And then finally getting into some code and how to actually build something like this. And then at the end, I will do a little recap there. So first, let me start with this demo here. Okay, I'm gonna turn this down. Okay, so here I have this demo. Make it a little bit bigger. Hopefully that'll work. Okay, so you come to this app. Let me first describe the data set. So I don't know how many of you have heard of a site called Shein. It's mostly women have heard of it, but it's a site that sells all kinds of clothes, primarily women's clothes. It's kind of a fast fashion site. So here is some of the, it's just a normal e-commerce store. I am on the coats page because they also sell intimate apparel, and sometimes it shows up on the homepage, and it wouldn't exactly be safe for a conference. I would probably be going against the code of conduct. So I'm just showing this right here, and this is kind of the backdrop of the store that I'm focusing on. Okay, so here's the chat bot. It says, "Hi there, let's find the very best clothes for you based on your needs. Are you searching for clothes for a specific occasion or in a specific color or matching a specific style? Describe what you want and let's get started." So here I'll say, and it's only women's clothes that I have for this, so I got to search for women's clothes. I'm just gonna give you that disclaimer. So I'm looking for a dress for a wedding. I like flowers. Okay. So not only am I doing a live demo, but I'm doing a live demo with AI. So I'm really hoping all of this works out. It's pretty risky what I'm trying to do here, but let's see how things turn out. Okay, so it says here are some floral dress options that you might like. It shows some of the options here, all floral dresses that you may or may not want to wear at a wedding. And then at the end, it says these selections offer a variety of styles with beautiful floral patterns that make them perfect for a wedding setting. Whether you're looking for something long or flowing or something a bit more structured, there's something for all of these. You might want to consider narrowing your search by specifying a length or a budget or a color, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say I come in and say, I would like a maxi dress, because I have learned that that is a long dress. I've learned a lot about women's clothes working on this. So it'll go and it will do is crunching. I'll explain how all of this works. So then it says, oh, here are some floral maxi dresses for you. And lo and behold, they're all long. And then it provides some more kind of flowery messaging at the end that these maxi dresses are not only lovely, but they're blooming with floral prints, perfect for a wedding. And it goes on and on and on. So I can say, never mind. One more example. I don't like flowers. I want something in blue, let's just say. Okay, so then it'll go and search and do its calculations. This is going to be the AI that I will describe in a second. And then Once it's done, it'll come back with some more options. They are still maxi dresses, but now they're in just solid blue. And in theory, still appropriate for a wedding. Yeah, I say you could probably wear that to a wedding. I don't know about the third one, but all of the other ones. Then it describes what those are, some criteria about them. So then the question is, how do I build something like this? How does something like this work? And that's what I want to spend the rest of my time talking through here. But before I do that, can I get everyone to stand up? Everyone, you get to stand up from your seats. You've been sitting down in this, super comfortable chairs. I noticed some people had to recline their seats, and I don't want you falling asleep during my talk. So what we're gonna do actually is we're gonna do 10 squats like this together, okay? Just to warm up the body, the limbs, get the blood flowing, that sort of thing, okay? And I'll count us out so we can all do it together, all right? I noticed some people stretching for some squats. I mean, that's a little bit much, but we'll warm up. Okay, ready? Here we go. Ready? 1, yeah, 2, 3, we're really doing this. 4, 5, halfway, keep going. 6, 7, 8, almost there. 9 and 10. Nicely done, everyone. Nicely done. Okay, now that we're ready, we can continue with this, okay? All right. So, like I said, my name is Ben Alegbadu. I'm a Christian, a husband, and a father. And this here is my family of 5, my wife, Rashida. We've been married for almost 14 years. Thanks, I appreciate that. Our oldest daughter, Simone, she's on the left. She turns 10 next month. And our middle daughter, Avery, she's on the right. She's 7. And our son, Asher, just turned 5 last month there. So I am also a Google developer expert in web technology. So I love doing everything around the web, which is why I wanted to be here for Halfstack. Okay, so let's get down into this first onion. I'm calling the helicopter view, where we talk about the high-level technical overview. So one thing I want to explain is that this looks like ChatGPT, but it's not ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is chat and GPT. Okay, well, I just said the 2 words together, but this makes sense, okay? So GPT is a large language model, right? And it understands natural language and can generate natural language in code, all right? And then the chat part is OpenAI's UI around that model to be able to generate code, understand code, and such. But it doesn't understand or have any information about the data set of Shein or your company or whatever you would use this kind of thing for. Whereas the tool I built called, I'm just going to call it Shop ChatGPT, it still leverages GPT, the large language model and such, but now it has an understanding of the product database, and there's a custom UI that I built around it as well. So it has all of the context. And if you didn't know what GPT stood for, I Googled it, and it stands for Generative Pre-Training Transformer. I have no idea what that means, okay? But that is what it stands for. All right, so let's keep going. Let me explain kind of how this chat user interface works. So the first thing is the person says, hey, I need a dress for a wedding. I like flowers, right? That's what I typed in. The next thing is this goes to GPT. And GPT comes back and says, well, I understood what this person said. Their search query really was floral dress, right? Flowers, floral, dress, okay? So then that now comes back to my app or my server or whatever this thing is hosted in, and turn that search query of floral dress into actual products that match that query. And then we take those products, those IDs, titles, whatever the case may be, return it to GPT, and then it processes it, figures out what's the best order for them and such, and makes flowery language around it. So it says, oh, here are some fabulous floral dresses that might be perfect for the wedding, et cetera, and then list out all the products. And then lastly, that gets passed to the UI. You take the top content, take the bottom content, and then replace the middle with that kind of carousel that you saw. So that's kind of how it all works together at a high level. But and then it takes that context that happened at the end where it said something about the floral wedding dress and brings it back to the beginning. So now I can say, oh, give me a maxi dress, give me something in blue, and it has all the context for what we discussed from the whole time. So I wanted to kind of diagram this. That was it at a high level, but let me kind of show you the areas of responsibility for each piece of this AI chatbot. So first you have the client, okay? And like I said, the client makes the request. I need a dress for a wedding. I like flowers. So the back end passes that through to GPT, the model, GPT-4 most likely, and passes that through. So like I said, GPT comes back and says, you know what? I have parsed that down to floral dress, and it passes it back to the back end. Now it's up to the back end to decide, well, what do you want to do with that? And the back end now hits a search API with that query. And the search API can do whatever it needs to do. In my case, it will take that search query and return back items that match that search query there. But that search API can be anything. It could be another REST endpoint, it could be a GraphQL endpoint, or in my case, actually just because the data set is local to my machine, I'm not actually hitting the Shein website, I just wrote some code in order to do it locally. And then return back the SKUs that matched. And then now I pass those matching items, so maybe the SKU ID, the title, maybe some metadata, and I pass that back to GPT. So from GPT's standpoint, all it did is say, here's a search query, and then it got back some items. It had no idea about the context of the data, how the search query was done, any of that. None of that had to be passed over to GPT. It offloaded the responsibility to the server or to my app. So all of the data of the product data got kept in-house. So then GPT then converts those items into a message that is more conversational than just search results and stuff like that. So, you know, here are some bullet list of the items and then what have you. Then that gets passed through back to the client. So you take that same message, but then you have to parse it down so that you can pull out the item IDs, convert those into, what do you want to call them, product SKU cards or something like that, and create that carousel. And then finally, that is what gets displayed to the user. So there's this kind of back and forth that's happening here, and but a separation of concerns there. So what this does, the separation of concerns, it allows us to not only build a search or shopping chatbot, you can build what I'm calling a discovery chatbot. So whatever you decide to have this interface work against whatever data, it can work that way. So it could be a search API like we just did. It could be an onboarding API or order history API where someone says, oh, I had an order for X last year and I believe it also came with this other product or whatever the case may be, and you can use the same back and forth. Or even searching for docs, for instance. Oh, I know I'm looking for docs about Create React app or something like that, and it can search. As long as your API can find those things, then it's able to create a response that's more conversational. And you can ask in a more conversational way. So the client expresses their desire, GPT understands and can generate natural language. And then in the middle is all of the product or domain understanding there. So there are some implications of this setup that you may already be going on in your head, right? So the benefit of this is what I've been describing is that all of the data is kept in-house. You only have to give GPT a small little bit of information so it can generate that response message. So that's great, but then the downside is that there's latency because you have to talk to OpenAI's model. It returns back a search query, then you tell it the items, and then it returns a message. Like there's some back and forth latency that happens. Also is that, another one is that we own the search results, right? So we know the user best, we know our data best, so we can provide the best search results, right? So we know the user's preferences. Maybe if this is a website that has products like this one, we know what's going on sale, what's in stock, all of those things, all that information that's very timely that we wouldn't want to have to give to GPT and for them to manage all of that. But the problem with that is that the experience is only good as our search. So if our search sucks, which you'll see a little bit in my implementation, if it's really rudimentary and you can't search for floral dresses because it doesn't support something like that, then the whole experience will kind of fall over. And then lastly, it's a conversational user experience, which is pretty cool these days with ChatGPT, obviously. So natural language allows us to just ask something normally instead of having to deal with checkboxes or drop-down filters and all those that you've probably used on sites. However, GPT can lie, and it can make up stuff, which is really annoying, right? So there's not this guarantee of what the experience is going to look like for the user. So I just went through that demo, and it was obviously a little bit contrived. I knew what I wanted to ask it. But how it responds has been different every time I've done it. I've probably done that 20 times, and it's different every single time in how it responds, which is kind of like people in terms of, we respond differently depending on what's going on. But from a standpoint of a website, you probably want to have some indication of consistency there. So either or, you have to weigh the pros and the cons there. So that's kind of it at a high level, non-technical, non-implementation. So you can start, hopefully, the wheels can start turning. So you could talk to a product manager about this, a designer about this, and see what kind of chat experience you could build across your data. So it doesn't have to be just user-facing. It could be internal searching for things. But anytime you see something where you're searching for something, you're trying to filter a large set of data, or things like this, it works pretty well that way. But let's go a little bit deeper into the implementation here. So the way that GPT works and OpenAI's API around it is through messages. So the user has some messages, the assistant has some messages, and there's a back and forth there. So let me walk through that. So first, we have to kind of give oh man, that is tiny. Okay, so I'll have to explain what it is. So we have to give the assistant its role or its persona. So here, the persona and the tone I gave it was that you're a friendly recommender of clothes. Do not make up products. I got to tell it that immediately because it would come up with what it thought were really cool products but weren't in my database. Pick at most 5 and sort them by relevance. Always return results as a bulleted list in the form of ID and name. At the end, summarize why you've selected these products. So that way it could kind of seem smart and intelligent and approachable. And do it in a bubbly tone. And suggest further attributes they can use to narrow down their options. So that's the tone, that's the requirements of how it communicates. Then next, I started off with the kind of first message the assistant has. So it says, hi there, let's find the very best clothes for you based on your needs as you're searching for clothes. Are you searching for clothes for a specific occasion, et cetera, et cetera? So this is now where it begins, right? So the user says, I need a dress for a wedding. I like flowers. So in addition to that, we pass along what are called a function, basically. And a function says, well, here's what I want you to call, and here are the parameters for that function. So in this example, I have budget as a parameter, as an attribute, pattern, type, and there are more that I'll show in a second. And each one has a description and what its type is. So for instance, type is the type of a product, so it could be a dress, a shirt, or what have you. So that then when they say I need a wedding dress, it'll come back and say, oh, type is dress, for instance, and pattern is floral. So we give that information to GPT. So then when they type in, I need a dress for a wedding, I like flowers, then it will come back with what I said, those search parameters. So instead of, the role is still an assistant, but there's no content, instead it returns what it calls tool calls and has those parameters, pattern, floral, type, dress. And those are the search parameters. So then now my app will take those search parameters, right, and decide how to return the results. It could literally be in any format. I could return a number, I could return an array, I could return a string. But since I'm returning an array of items, it as the role tool, that's how I send it back. And then at the end, the assistant responds and says with the content based upon the items that I gave it for the search results. And that's kind of the back and forth that happens in order to go from user request all the way to the response that we see there. So here is an example, or here's the fields that I do provide to it so it can understand the kind of the topology, I guess, of the data of the products. So there's a budget, there's colors you can do, there's the length of the outfit or the dress or the sleeves, whatever the case would be, the pattern, stripes, florals, etc., the style, elegant or high waist, etc., or the type, a dress, a shirt, pants, etc., etc. So I give all this information to the model so it can understand how to correctly parse the content that is passed to it. So that's the high-level implementation. So you could build that in JavaScript, you could build that in Python, you could build that in Java, whatever your language of choice is. But now I want to deep dive into exactly how I built it in JavaScript, just so you can have an idea of what the implementation would look like. So the first thing I started with is the OpenAI node module, or package, basically. So OpenAI has two blessed packages that they use. There's the Node API, and then there's the Python SDK. So here in this code, it's the chat by function, which is kind of the function that does the work. We create the SDK client here, and the key part is the tools, which I'll expand into what that constant is. And then we make the call, we get back the messages, and then the messages has the content that we want. And we have to parse the messages, which I'll show in a second. So then the search tool is where we define what the function we have. So I named it search products. It could be any kind of name, but that's the name I gave it. And give it a function that it's going to run when the parameters come back. So the nice thing about this Node API is that I don't have to manage, or we don't have to manage, all of the message response, request response. It handles that for us. All we have to do is just provide the function we want it to call when GPT figures out what the search parameters are there. And I'll dig into what product search does in a second. But one thing I wanted to call out is the parse assistance messages. So that's the one where you get the response back. It has the flowery message at the beginning, then it has the bulleted list of the IDs, and then it has the flowery messages at the bottom. So we got to convert that bulleted list of IDs into the product cards that we see. So we have to get the information for the product, each product. We have to get the images and such, and then render it out. So what I have to do is parse that list of IDs. And that ends up being the most complicated part of the whole thing, because even though I told the assistant that I wanted it in bulleted list with ID : name, it'll just decide to return it in various different formats. Sometimes it just has the ID, sometimes it puts the name and then the ID, all kinds of different things, which is the challenge with the model there. So, but once I can parse out the SKUs, then everything else, getting the products, is pretty straightforward there. So, like I mentioned, there wasn't a API that I used. Shein unfortunately doesn't have a public API that I could use. I really tried to see, maybe behind the scenes they were using an API. So what I did is I downloaded from a machine learning site, it's called Kaggle, a database of 110,000 SKUs that were scraped. Somebody took that time to scrape it. And used that, put it in a JSON file, and then would run a rudimentary search locally. So I used this package called mini search, which was pretty clever and helpful. But the thing I wanted to just call out here is that the search query I ended up doing was just taking the values of each field in the object. So even though it said pattern, floral, and type dress, I would just search for floral dress in the data. And because the type and the pattern didn't really matter as much. So that's the only thing I wanted to call out. And then on the right, I have all of the different meta values that I was looking through. So then there's the actual front end using React. I used React to build it, and this new hook, use form state, that I had never used before, along with React Server components. So it was actually pretty straightforward. It wasn't that much code, and I never had to make a client-side fetch request. Everything just happened through form submissions here. So use form state is like use state if you've used React before, except the set function is a little bit different. So it assumes that it is the action of a form element. So when you click submit, the form action gets called with the form data. And the form data now calls this function add shopper message, which I told it to call when the form data was submitted. So it gets called with the current set of messages and then the new message that I want. So pull all of that out from the form data and then call my chat by function. My existing messages and then the new user message. And it goes and does its thing and comes back with the new list of messages based upon that whole message flow that I talked about. And also, so that was the UI front end. I also built one on the console because I really wanted to test the interaction with the assistant quickly without having to deal with a browser and all of the UI around it and such. So I really just wanted to run a script, see what it did, and have the response and then be done. So I ended up building, this is basically the code right here to do it on the console. So using Node's readline to take in information about what the user typed, and then doing the same chat by function call there. So I have links throughout that have links to the actual code of it. So just to recap and kind of explain this whole situation, the nice thing about this is that it has separation of expertise. So it's even more than separation of concerns, it's separation of expertise. So like I mentioned, the client is really good at taking in input and displaying the product display, right? So of course, it's the browser, it displays things in the UI, and then it also can take in data through forms. And then GPT, like I've mentioned a number of times, is really good at natural language processing and generation. Like it's really surprisingly good at the generation, which always surprises me because it really sounds like how a person would respond, and sometimes even better. So it's good at natural language, and then it also can create the search query that we were talking about. So you have the client on this side, you have GPT on this side, and in the middle is our application, our backend, let's say. And it's responsible or an expert in returning the results based on the query, and then also parsing the message that it gets back from GPT there. So once you get the slides, I have links to all of these things. The app itself, the app isn't hosted anywhere because it's backed by my OpenAI token, and if I put it public, you guys would run my bill like crazy. So it's only running locally, but you can also clone it and then run it locally if you get your own API key. And then there's docs for how to do the function calling, and then examples of, or documents of the different things that I use to build the application. So that's it at a high level, kind of walking it through. Hopefully you feel inspired, I guess, to try something like this. Bring it to your company, see how you can build something cool with AI if you've been wondering how to build things with AI. And have links to all my socials if you want to reach out and contact me there. Thank you very much.